again.
Let's do the time warp
Do do do
again.
do 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 do.
Well, we're not gonna do the time warp because we're both sitting down because it's been a long day. But hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Spoiler Room. It's horrifically horror musical. It's horrifically musical month here, and this is our first Over the Hill special. And what is the Overhill special? If you haven't heard me talk about it ad nauseum, well, I turned 50 this year. And so I felt the need to look at films that turned 50 this year as well. And one of those just happens to be probably one of the most, if not the most popular cult film to date. And that would be the Rocky Horror Picture Show, 1975. And yeah, folks, tonight we are talking that for our first Over the Hill episode. So thank you for venturing down the stairs, pulling up a chair, and popping your favorite drink with us. Tonight I'm drinking wine,
Ooh.
respectively, because, well, the folks had wine at Frankenfurter's, his event. So they were all drinking wine. So, I thought it was appropriate. And also appropriate with me tonight is my fellow crew member, the wonderful Angelique Bone. Hello, Angelique. How are you?
I am fantastic. I'm
And I
so
love
excited.
I love your tag, a wild and untamed thing. You're the bee with the deadly sting. And you
Get
can't
hit
okay.
and your mind goes
When goes
ping.
ping. See, I found myself doing that while rewatching the film. I didn't have to rewatch this film. I've watched it many, many times over
Mhm.
the years. And, I didn't, but I'm watching it and I'm singing right along with it.
Yeah.
It's just I've listened to the soundtrack many, many times. This film is just a film that clicked with me. And what's funny is I wasn't really aware of it much until a friend of mine in high school told me about it. And we put the and she had been to like one of the midnight showings, with the
Yeah.
audience participation stuff in it. And she showed me it. I'm like, bah, and this film just clicked with me on so many levels. And I was like, yeah, after I watched it the first time, I've watched it a numerous times since. I adore this film so much for so many reasons. And yeah, Angelique, do you remember when you first saw Rocky Horror?
It was kind of the same circumstances. I was a weirdo theater kid, and I always have navigated towards the unusual, the off kilter. And I was watching something on VH1, and they
Mhm.
mentioned Rocky Horror Picture Show. And my mom was like, "I know that movie." And I was like, "Yeah, let's check it out." And she's like, "Well, I don't know, because repressed home, I wasn't allowed to like wear makeup until I was 16 and whatnot." So
Ah,
finally I was old enough, I think it was a junior in high school,
wow.
and watched Rocky Horror, and no looking back. I bought the soundtrack, I bought the script, I
Mhm.
have the or I had the CD-ROM game, uh, which was
I didn't
really
have well, actually, the I have this box.
uh
This is 25 years ago this was released, folks. The
yeah.
25th anniversary, 25 years of absolute pleasure release of the Rocky Horror Picture
Hmm.
Show. It's this wonderful slipcover that
Yeah.
has wonderful pictures on it. And the discs inside the pictures are amazing. I'll try to show just a little because
Oh,
I don't
those are
want
great.
YouTube to but this is just an amazing release with
Mhm.
extras. It's got the theatrical experience on here where you can watch the Rocky Horror Picture Show Club do the live performances that they do at
Mhm.
midnight. And there's DVD ROM games on here as well. Oh,
Nice.
not only that, wonderful animated menus because they used to do that back in the day,
Mhm.
folks. Yes, you will never hear me not talk about animated, awesome menus on DVD releases that you just don't have anymore.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, it's even got the DVD promo. You know which one I talk. DVD.
Yeah.
It's the future. They show like Armageddon and they'd show, Independence Day and like, you know,
Yeah.
high definition sound, THX quality, and it's boom, and
Whoa.
animated menus when those were actually a feature, like a big deal, like
Yeah.
yeah,
I
high
think my
quality.
favorite animated menus are the ones on A Fish Called Wanda
Mhm.
and House of a Thousand Corpses.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I really like the one they did with The Abyss. Again, we were talking in the
Mhm.
pre-show about Jim Cameron, and he oversaw that one when they released The Abyss, and that has a wonderful animated menu, interactive, and this one does too. This one, I
Mhm.
don't know if you've got this one,
I
Angelique?
do. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
got a wonderful animated menu where it's got the lips and they talk to you, and then they
Mhm.
got like the lower half of just the fishnets and
Mhm.
and the lingerie come out and like kick the menu option and just sit there and do a little dance. It's amazing.
Yeah.
This release is amazing. Um and watching the film again, this holds up. Now, Angelique, for maybe the 3 people out there who have not heard of the Rocky Horror Picture Show, shame on you folks. Uh,
Yes.
can you give the synopsis of the Rocky Horror Picture
Sure.
Show?
Brad Majors and Janet Weiss attend the wedding of Betty Monroe, who they were going to college with in Denton. And they are driving home and they get a flat and walk through a storm to the nearest house, which happens to be a giant castle in the middle of the woods, where Dr. Frankenfurter and his zany gang of Transylvanians are having a party because Dr. Frankenfurter has created a man. And everybody gets a little riled up in the bathing suit areas. And there's some space hijinks. And at the end of the movie, the aliens return to their home planet.
that's that's a good high level synopsis of this film. There's so much going on with this film. It is I try not to use the word often, but especially watching this again, it is an amazing piece of art
Yeah.
what they do with this film because it is so subversive and
Mhm.
there is so much being said underneath this for 1975 when it came out. Um that that's what makes me appreciate it
Yeah.
on so many things because it's set during the it's not even though it came out in 75 it's not set in 75. It's set more it's set in the was it 50s, I think it's meant.
Yeah, because Brad asked about the Madison.
Right,
Yeah.
because Brad asked about the Madison, you've got the cars, you've got the style and everything
Mhm.
of it, and the '50s is usually associated with conservatism, that's the conservative movement, McCarthyism, the whole 9 yards, censorship, blacklisting, all of that, the conservative nation,
Yep. Coming off of
conservative
World War II.
values in the culture. That's when you actually saw a lot of your like comics in that being kind of restricted. Again, it was just so I think that's wonderful that they set this story up during a conservative age and then we meet all of these characters who are not not conservative. They embrace their originality, their
Mhm.
selves, their lifestyle, their sexuality, their sensuality, all the things that are repressed that we associate, especially in the 50s,
Mhm.
are freely expressed at Frankenfurter's place.
Mhm.
you know and I think that's what I love about it. I mean, let's talk about Brad and Janet, who, yes folks, this was a studio backed film which almost wanted to cut production, if I remember correctly, during it. Tim Curry, Susan Sarandon, and Barry Bostwick are probably the biggest names in here. uh and so yeah, and yes, the Susan Sarandon is in this film. And when we open, there's this wonderful wedding thing where we get to see the squares, and they play up the
Mhm.
squares uh angle, and we meet Brad and Janet, Weiss. Uh I love this first song where damn it, Janet, I
I
love
love
you.
you.
Or if you do the audience participation, let's go screw. You know, but what do you think of this just opening here? Because we get the narrator, and then we get them and the wedding. And what do you think of this setup? Just them showing this first.
It's amazing because yeah, this I've watched this today, and
Hmm.
it's the first time I've watched it. I want to say almost 10 years.
Hmm.
Just because, like you, I didn't have to watch it. If I thought about the Rocky Horror Picture Show, it was right there in my brain. I had it. It was on. It
Hmm.
was on tap. But rewatching it today, it's like it just sets you up with this idyllic. Like, is this going to be a romance movie?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean,
Yeah. I mean, it is in a way,
in a way,
in several ways.
it's multiple positions, but anyway,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Um, but it's just like, like, okay, where is this going?
Hmm.
You know?
And what I love about this setup, and you won't catch it the first time you watch the film, but after you've watched it through the first time and you watch it a second time, which you should watch it many times, uh we have Frankenfurter, Riff Raff, and Magenta in the back running the church.
Yeah. In Colombia, you know,
And Columbia, oh yeah, Columbia
yeah,
shows up too. That's right,
yeah,
because he
yeah.
bringing in the casket. Uh,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's like, okay, okay, but it's one of those things, that's so brilliant. Just the contrast between
yeah,
these people and then the people you meet at the castle.
which makes you sit there and wonder, okay, is you know, are these the front that they're putting up? Are they meant to be the same characters? Or because we learn later who the aliens are? Yes, spoilers, folks. This is a spoiler room, and it's movie's 50 years old. Come on. When we learn who the aliens are, did they take the images of
Of
these
these
religious
people.
folks, because the church is close to Frankenfurter's place,
Hmm.
and that's the image they took, which makes that even more wonderful. The
Yeah.
fact that you have these free spirited individual aliens taking on the image of folks who are working in a church that is supposed to be very straight and square.
Well, it's like Richard O'Brien is a great, big, huge sci-fi fan. It could be a
Yeah.
whole Invasion of the Body Snatchers homage. You know.
And that's the feeling I almost get with it. But I just love how they show up, not in makeup, not as their characters in the church, and I'm like, man, that just puts us at a whole different level. And I love during the song you have Brad and Janet saying, you know, damn it, Janet, I love you. They're so passionate, and then you have them in the background, and they're just like,
Mm,
oh, Brad.
mm.
Oh, like they're like, get out of our church. They're,
Yeah.
they're like so unenthused, and the fact they bring in this casket while they're singing this love song as well is just. I mean,
Yeah.
this whole thing sets up kind of the vibe, and it's got that 50s rockabilly type of vibe to the song too. The
Mm.
50s rock
Little,
and love
yeah, doo-woppy kind of.
doo-woppy. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it. And what do you think of our Brad and Janet?
Oh, Brad is such a
Asshole. No,
good
just kidding.
kid.
Yeah,
He's such a
he's repressed. He is
He's so
so
repressed. He's
repressed.
he's wow. He definitely needs somebody to remove the stick.
Yeah, or put a stick, depending.
Stick, yeah. Well, I
Yeah,
mean,
well,
you could force it out the other way, but
yeah.
um, it's that whole like, golly gee willikers kind of deal. And let's go tell our teacher that we're engaged. Okay, you goody two shoes.
Yeah, you go, guys. Well, what's even funny is, and it comes out later as these two discover who they really are, which is part of this thing, at least to me.
Mhm,
I know this film has definitely deep meaning in the LGBTQ plus community
mhm,
quite a bit. And I think that's awesome. I don't exactly have that perspective. So but from my perspective, I love the theme of people being themselves, especially in this culture that they are living in outside of Frankenfurter's place, where
mhm,
people aren't actually being themselves.
mhm.
Though I think Janet lets a little bit of herself show a little bit sooner than Brad does, even before they get to the castle. Before things
Oh
get wild
yeah.
at castle, Janet seems at least a little bit more well-rounded than Brad.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's not just me. She at least is
No, no. Janet is a little more worldly and a little more confident than,
confident for sure. Yeah.
yeah. Like Brad is confident, but in that kind of, it doesn't matter what's right. I'm here and I'm Brad and I'm gonna do what I do because this is right.
And the feeling I get is that when Janet was at her friend's bachelorette party, they had a male stripper, whereas if Brad was with his buddy's bachelor party, they went out bowling. That's
Mm,
that's just the impression I
yeah.
got with
They
the
didn't even have a beer. They had Coca-Cola
and Coke
or milk, you know.
or milk, a Sprite. What are you talking about? No, no, I'm gonna go wild and have a Dr. Pepper. Oh.
Not barbecue Sprite.
It's a new one. I've heard barbecue Coke. I have not heard barbecue Sprite. I like that. It fits quite a bit. Um, so yeah, I mean, so we've got this group that is conservative, and we have our tale being told wonderfully by Dr. Not who's it? The criminologist
Yes.
played by Charles Gray. And he just adds a whole wonderful level to this story, really, as he's narrating it, because I love it because he's narrating it, but you don't get the feel he's not judgmentally narrating it. He's not
No.
recounting this like this is a tale of woe and a tale of warning. He's just telling the story, and he's
Mhm.
into it,
Yeah.
quite
It's not like Reefer Madness where they're assigning blame and
right.
shame and everything else. He's just like, okay, they went to this castle and things got weird, but it's okay. Here's the
and and
facts.
and this is a true musical, folks, because we get a song, Damn It, Janet. We get the song, There's a Light on Frankenstein's Place. So they're singing
Mhm.
while they're after their car, which did Frankenfurter's crew cause the flat?
I don't know. Brad did say that he didn't fill the tires up correctly,
He did
and
say that.
he should have filled the flat.
He,
But
he
then again, they might have been looking for more victims. Or
it just makes me wonder when watching it again this time. And again, it's one of those films where if you're paying attention, you're like, huh. I was just watching it because it almost has that 2000 Maniacs vibe a bit, to where they're driving along, they see the
yeah.
motorcycle folks driving past them, and all of a sudden they get to this random roadblock that
Mhm.
the motorcycles came from this direction. They even pointed
Mhm.
out. And then when he backs up, they get a flat tire, and I would say more than one flat tire. I think both the tires go,
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if it was like either booby trapped or something
Mhm.
made me wonder to get them to the castle,
I've
possibly.
wondered, way back when, like was it on purpose or was it a coincidence? You know.
It just I always thought it was maybe on purpose. Not quite sure the
Mhm.
motivation on it, but maybe on purpose, because you have the roadblock and then they back up and it
Mhm.
and then they get to walk in the rain and sing, and the rain even sets up that wonderful song, which we'll
Mhm.
get to. But yeah, I mean, this film, there are not many spots where in between songs,
Mm-mm.
really.
They're kind of one right after the other.
And in fact, when you do get the segments where it's a little bit longer than normal from between song to song, you feel it almost.
Mhm,
It's really crazy. You feel that extra length of time, like, wow, things
mhm.
get a little bit heavy in this part because we're not just jumping from one song to another.
Yeah,
But uh when we meet Riff Raff at the castle, I love Riff Raff.
yeah.
Riff Raff is out of all the characters, and don't get me wrong, I love all the characters. I really love Riff Raff
Mhm.
because he is a complete vibe, as the kids would say. From the very start when you meet him, and Riff Raff's played by Richard O'Brien, who did the co-writing for this film. He didn't actually direct, but he did co-write, and he did all the songs for it. I just love his attitude.
Mhm.
Just this really, I mean, you only really get to see him excited. You see him excited at some points, like especially when we get to the song. But when he first meets them, he's just like totally unfit. He's like, oh, he's, why don't you come in out of the rain? And
You're wet.
you're wet. I love. He looks at Brad, and then he looks at Janet, and then that's when he just goes, "You're wet." She's like, It's raining," and he's like, "Oh yeah." He didn't even notice. Like he's so indifferent. He is so indifferent, and yes, being the sci-fi fan that O'Brien is, there's a lot of classic horror references. Obviously, Frankenfurter is Frankenstein. He's building a guy, of course. He's
Mhm.
got to have his henchman, who is the hunchback, who Riff Raff is. He's got a hunch on his back, a bruti. But I just love all the things O'Brien brings to this character. His little twitches. I don't know why, and I have absolutely no idea why. But when he's walking down the hall to have them meet to take him to the banquet hall, he's doing this thing with his thumb to where it's just this thumb is just moving, and I don't know why, but I love that. He's just got that, like, that's how he's like thinking or whatnot. His thumb
Mhm.
is just moving, you know. And then Magenta's just off the
I
grid.
love Magenta. I love Patricia Quinn so much. That made me wanna watch, Lords of Salem, you
Oh
know?
yeah.
But she's in a way just like Riff Raff. She could care less, you know, about anything that's going on.
Well, they are two peas in a pod,
Mhm.
that brother and sister, who are very, 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 very close.
Hey, those elbows gotta touch sometime.
So yeah, I love the Magenta character. What I find interesting is the backstory, because folks, if even if you haven't seen this film, the lips, the opening of the lips,
Mhm.
the singing of silent picture double feature, the opening credits. The lips are Patricia Quinn's.
Mhm.
It was supposed to be her voice singing the original opening of the song. That's why she did it, because apparently there was the stage play first, if I
Mhm.
remember the order,
Yep, the
and
Rocky
she
Horror
played,
Show.
yeah, and she played Magenta on the stage, but it was supposed to be her singing and her lips in the opening. But Richard O'Brien decided to record the song. Still kept her lips, but recorded the song. And when she found out, she almost left the movie. But thankfully, they got her back, because
Mhm.
Magenta is such an amazing character as well. Another free spirit of sorts, in many ways. Contrast to Riff, who Riff
Mhm.
Raff, it tends to be a little bit more of the mellow guy. Magenta is not. She lets her flag fly. Even if it means she may be violating a stuffed bird. That's you roll
Yeah.
with it.
Yeah.
I just but yeah, the dynamic between these two versus, and it's such a wonderful contrast to what we saw in the first like 10 minutes of this film with the conservative area, and then we get into Frankenfurter's castle, which is just a whole nother realm, a whole nother identity in itself. And I love that. I just love the originality. I love the extras who I was mentioning to my wife, have kind of a John Waters-esque feel to
Mhm.
them, the extras for
Yeah,
sure. You know,
yeah.
I
There's
could.
it's a
Yeah, go ahead.
diverse crowd. I mean, a very diverse crowd.
It is a diverse crowd, and you know, diverse food, dress. Everybody is being themselves, and it's wonderful to see them, especially with the time warp. I mean,
Yeah.
even if people haven't seen this film, the time warp song, there's a reason why it's still played today.
Yep.
I out of
Yep.
all the songs.
Mhm. Yeah, no matter where you are, what you're doing, like today, I was at my desk and Time Warp came on, and under my desk, I'm taking my jump to the left and my steps to the
Step to the
right.
right.
And, couldn't put my hands on my hips, but, I did the little, and then your
Yeah.
knees, and then your thrust,
Pelvic thrust really drive you
drive you
insane.
insane.
Such wonderful song and talent and choreography with that.
Mhm.
And what's hilarious about the time warp segment is you have Brad and Janet realizing what they may have walked into, and they're trying to leave, and they walk backwards up the stairs at one point, trying to stay like cordial. And
Yeah.
yeah, and so and then that's when we meet Tim Curry
Oh.
as Frankenfurter. Oh my god. This wonderful person.
Mm. There are moments in your life where you can pinpoint where you were radically changed forever. And his reveal in the elevator, and then when he just struts to the stage and when he throws his cape off, just,
By that, you're just in. I mean, when I
yeah,
saw that, I'm like, I'm in.
yeah, like we're,
I have no idea where this film
yeah,
is going. He is a character. I should say they are a character that you
mm,
can't really put into a category.
mm-mm.
Frankenfurter is
Mad genius.
their own person,
Yeah.
you know, very free, very contrast to your Brad and Janet for sure. Um, but what's also great about it is how accepting everybody is in this environment of each other. Brad and Janet are the only two that, well, actually more Brad.
Brad, yeah,
Janet already starts to get into things during the,
yeah.
after she's done fainting.
Right, once she gets over the initial shock, then
Yeah,
then she's like, "Well, wait a minute, they're not hurting anybody."
she's like, this kind of looks like some fun.
Yeah,
Uh,
let's have a glass of wine, Brad.
yeah, have a glass of wine, Brad. And Brad's the one that's shocked by everything, and everybody else is just having a great time being themselves,
Mhm.
and that's what I love. What I also love, again, watching it this time specifically for the show, I was trying to catch some things I haven't that I've watched many times. And another reason why I love Riff Raff is because of his dynamic with Frankenfurter.
Yeah, there's this
He
complete disdain.
he does not like him from the start. At first
Mm-mm.
you think it may be gross, but no, no. Even when they're doing the Sweet Transvestite song,
Mhm.
which Curry owns, this song is
Yeah.
just, I'm like, you know what? I wish I had a wig and makeup right now. I mean, that's what he makes me. I'm like,
Mhm.
he is so cool. And but you see the reactions. He's like Riff Raff's going through the motions because
Mhm.
everybody they're doing their thing, but at the same time, he's like, yeah, when I get my opportunity, which he does
You're
later,
done.
he's like,
Yeah.
you're done. He's like, I've can only put up with so much of it.
Mhm.
Magenta seems to go along with it a little better. And then of course we have Nell Campbell as Columbia. Oh,
Columbia.
Col-
Oh.
Columbia is probably the most, I don't want to say innocent as far as unaware, but as far as like the personalities go,
Yeah.
she feels like the most pure
Very tragic
personality.
figure.
She's a very tragic folk because she big fan of Frankenfurter. She's a
Mhm.
Frankenfurter groupie of sorts, which we find out later. But
Mhm.
you know, you just of this group of four, she's the one that fits, but also doesn't quite fit because she has light to her. I mean, we first time we see her, you know, Riff Raff, Magenta, and even Frankfurter are all dressed in black and more drab clothes, and that Columbia shows up and she is sparkling. She's got
Mhm.
tap shoes, she's got a glitter hat, she's got the bling. She is decked out
Yeah.
you know, wonderfully. And it's just an interesting contrast between these characters,
Mhm.
you know, each one having their own identity and their own representation and their own personality
Mhm.
quite a bit. But I just love Riff Raff's reaction to it. Stays consistent throughout.
It does. It does. He hates Frankenfurter. He hates his job. You know, he's not into it. He's not
he,
into it at all.
he is definitely not into it, you could tell. And you know, that shows up later on because when Frankenfurter introduces us to his creation, Rocky.
Rocky.
Do you get the impression that Riff Raff and Magenta didn't expect him to be able to be successful in raising Rocky?
I think so. I think that they just were, again, going through the motions, letting him have his little fun. And I think if it hadn't have worked, that they just would have been off. They would have gone
Yeah.
back home. But because it did work, it caused a big mess, and things went off the rails.
Well, yeah, because you know, we aren't given a full explanation with anything, which I love. We don't get a full exposition on pretty much
Mhm.
anything except Eddie. Um of their
I love
mission.
Eddie.
Eddie of their mission, but um you get the impression that they were there to, you know, create the life, but Frankenfurter turned it to his own personal
Mhm.
project.
Well, I think if I remember correctly, because it's always been very difficult for me to understand what they're talking about with Dr. Scott's research about
Right.
sound or something. Like,
Well, the sound and the transmission of
yeah,
matter across time and even
space.
space and time.
Yeah, time. Yeah. um,
The transmat beam.
yeah, the transmat beam. Um, so I think maybe, like the streams got crossed or something, and that's the reason why they were there initially. But then
Right.
Frankenfurter went crazy under our yellow sun and turned into a sex beast.
Well, the thing is, I don't think he ever. I think he always was the
Mm,
way. I don't think he. What I because as 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 maybe different than what many are used to as far as uniforms and that go when we're
mhm,
it's revealed later during the show, the final show, um when Magenta and Riff Raff show up.
mhm.
uh yes, they're both wearing fishnets and that, but their uniforms are very uniform
Yes.
looking. So it makes me almost, I'm almost thinking that Rocky, I mean not Rocky, Frankenfurter never really got to be himself when he was on the planet, and here he
He's
is not
free.
under,
Yeah.
he's not under strict watch, so he
Mhm.
let himself be more himself.
Yeah, no, I can
And
totally see that. Yeah.
you know, and then when Raff and Magenta show up later to basically shut everything down, um yeah. Yeah, folks, to try to really deconstruct this film is, there's a lot going on
Mhm.
wonderfully. I mean, we have you know, Frankenfurter creating his man Rocky, who is an innocent, who is a blank slate, basically. I mean,
Mhm.
he's just this
Prometheus.
Atlas, this Prometheus, this person who is basically could be whatever you want him to be because he's freshly made and not quite sure who he is yet. So Frankenfurter, he takes advantage of that, leads him, wows him with weights and such. And it even gets him to get over the fact that in front of everybody, we probably have one of the darker moments of this film.
Yes. I never really, well, I do know why
Mhm.
Eddie was killed, because he was gonna tell.
He was going to tell, yeah.
Yeah, and
Well, I also think it's a bit of a jealousy thing with
yeah.
Eddie because Eddie was put in deep freeze. Eddie was Frankenfurter's first project of sorts. Eddie
Mhm.
came from outside, um, and he brought Eddie in. Eddie was going to be his project, but Eddie ended up developing feelings between him and Columbia,
Mhm. And
which
Frankenfurter needs all the attention.
and Frankenfurter needs the attention. And you also get the impression when Eddie shows up out of the deep freeze that a lot of people liked Eddie.
Mhm.
He was, he comes out with Happy Tootie, bless my
Bless my
soul.
soul.
I really love that rock
Rock
and
and
roll. And
roll.
but he comes out and everybody's singing with him and
Mhm.
dancing, you know. Columbia is just losing her shit because holy crap, my dead
Mhm.
boyfriend's back.
Yeah.
Everybody's paying attention to someone other than Frankenfurter.
Mhm.
And that I think is one of his motivations for
Well,
eliminating.
he also saw Rocky clapping his hands,
Yeah,
and
and
can't have that.
that was like the final straw.
Mhm.
And it and that's what I give props to, uh, them on how they handle this. Both O'Brien in the script and Jim Sharman as the director is everything's happy and hot patootie. We get this wonderful Meatloaf tune. He's with Columbia. They're practically doing it right there in
Mhm.
front of everybody. They don't care. They're very free spirit. They're loving, showing their love for each other. And then Frankenfurter shows up with an axe and chases him. And Meatloaf sells the hell out of being scared, and
Yeah.
he kills
Eddie.
kills him in front of everyone.
Mhm.
There's blood trail. He's
Mhm.
covered in blood, and he does this in front of everyone indiscriminately. And it's there's no music really. There's just Eddie's screams and the sounds of the axe, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
whoa!
And then it stops.
Everything just stops, and you're just like, wow!
Wow, yeah. Okay, this here's the horror, you know.
Here's the horror part of it, and
Mhm.
it's handled the way you want it to because in that moment, you're really not sure anymore how to take Frankenfurter.
Mhm.
Before that, he's kind of, he's this guy who's this person, excuse me, this person who is, just he very eccentric, very extravagant, smart, apparently
Mhm.
very much so because he brought back someone from the dead, but he's got this dark side to him
Mhm.
to where he's really indiscriminate about killing someone if he really wanted to. And
Yeah.
that just adds another layer to him to where you're like, huh. But at the same time, he goes back to his reprisal song and he's riding a horse,
A pommel horse,
athletic,
yeah.
a pommel horse. And suddenly you're just like, oh, okay. We're,
Yeah,
it's,
we're
it's
back.
almost,
It's all good.
okay.
And
It's
then
all,
then he and Rocky are off to the bridal suite.
to the to the bridal suite. Yes. Uh, and Brad and Janet are shown to their separate rooms, which they do a very efficient way of reutilizing the same room because Janet's put into her room first,
Yeah.
and Columbia just she's upset. She's had enough of their shit, so she's like, yeah,
Mhm.
whatever. Throws the robe or whatnot at her, and it's
Mhm.
all in red. But then we cut to Brad's room and it's all in blue,
All in
but it's
blue.
the same room. What's
Yeah.
even funny is I saw it this time and I can't believe I haven't seen it before, but
Mhm.
up where the blue lamp is,
Mhm.
right next to it, there's a red lamp hanging.
Yeah, I wondered, I haven't, like I said, I haven't watched this in a long time,
Mm,
and I wondered how, like, in today's uh climate, as far as,
mhm.
consent, Me Too, things like that, how these scenes would play, because, I remembered them, but not exactly
Ah,
how they went. And I'm like, okay, is this coercion? No. He lays out the facts and they go for it. And the same with Brad, like,
it's yeah, it is interesting watching it again how it plays out. I mean, this is 1975 and that the way it's
mm,
handled, but because folks rock when Frankenfurter's consummated his relationship with Rocky, he ends up visiting individually both Brad and Janet.
mhm,
And he poses as Brad going into Janet's room at first.
mhm,
He crawls into bed and kisses a few times, and suddenly she pulls the wig off and realizes it's it's Frank.
mhm,
And Frank has one of the best lines ever, and he uses it twice.
mhm.
Janet goes, "Where's Brad?" Oh, what have you done with Brad? Is the question that Janet
Nothing
poses.
yet.
Nothing yet. Do you think I should? And he, looking at it again.
You've gone fuzzy.
Oh, I was hoping that I was hoping I had that cured. Sorry.
It's okay.
Um, watching it again this time, I, it was already that it was like, yeah, it's hard to say in today's day and age how those scenes play. It's
Yeah, it like, it wasn't, when you remember watching it, like, it was titillating, but watching it today, it's like there's this little undercurrent of a little danger,
yeah.
you know. And
There's
so that darkness that's in Frankenfurter, we saw him kill somebody, and what's going on now?
but I think if she yeah, it's hard to say. It does feel a bit like coercion, but at the same time, she's not fully protesting
Right. No, that's that
either.
again, that's why
It's
I'm not
really
like,
hard.
oh, well, cancel Rocky Horror. No. It,
No, no,
it's it's interesting. Like
it's
like I said, he lays out the facts, and then she's like, yeah,
yeah,
let's
okay, yeah, let's do
yeah,
this.
let's go for it.
Which makes me wonder if she said no, let's not do it. I honestly think Frank would have left.
I agree. I agree.
That's the thing is I think if push, it comes to show if she would have just said no, I am
Mm,
sorry, no, no,
mhm.
I think Frank would have left
Yeah. Yeah.
because Frank, I mean, yes, he kills Eddie or whatnot, but when it comes to the intimacy part of it, he really
Mhm.
wants he wants to be taken for themselves, not
Yeah. And
and
for it
we
to be pleasure.
right.
Yeah.
What's interesting is looking at it, I think Brad gives in quicker to Frank
Then Janet.
than Janet does.
Oh.
I think he opens up more quickly than
Mhm.
Janet did. You know?
Yeah.
Um and I thought that was interesting watching it this time. Like, oh, what
Mhm.
Brad
Yeah,
really
he
just
gives
kind
her.
of rolls with this a
Oh,
little.
please don't put me in the briar patch.
He rolls with it a lot quicker
Mhm.
than Janet did in many, and I was just like, huh.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go, Brad. Letting you discover something about yourself.
Mhm.
You had maybe repressed, I mean, not maybe you had repressed. And then during that,
Mhm.
as well as when the escape of Rocky at the hands of Riff Raff, doing ye
Yeah.
old fire against Frankenstein type of
Uh-huh.
scene. just so that he and Magenta could be alone.
Yeah.
That's
And
the
then we
whole
have
thing.
the first instance of elbow sex.
We have the elbow, yes, whatever that,
That's what we used to call it because my,
the
my
elbow
friend and I,
sex.
we would, I mean, that's how we would greet each other, like in the mornings and in the hallways and stuff. Elbow sex, and we'd, do our elbows and
Nice.
walk away.
I don't. I love how they added that because that just gives you that impression of being not of this earth of sorts.
Hmm.
Just the way they go about that. They have different greetings and such, or ways to show affection or whatnot.
It's like, what's that
Um,
quote? Was it Star Trek 4 where they go into that tavern and Kirk kicks somebody in the crotch and they don't react? And somebody says, well, not all aliens' genitals are in the same place.
oh yeah, they also did that in Alienation. They did that
Hmm.
in Alienation. He kicks the alien. Don't they teach you about our physiology in cop school? But yeah, I mean, it is just and then you have the relationship between Columbia and Magenta, which they're kind of the girls banding together. They're having watching Janet, because Janet now, after having been intimate with Frank, has discovered something about herself, but she feels
Hmm.
bad because of Brad
Hmm.
until she sees Rocky.
Rocky.
Not only is it Rocky, but it's Rocky who is hurt,
Yeah.
and she needs to take care of his wounds.
Yeah, she kisses his boo boos.
She kisses his boo boos and his other boo boos, and that's where we get the touch it, touch it, touch it, touch me. I want to feel dirty. So it's her awakening of discovering something inside her that she really enjoyed, that had been kept from her
Hmm.
this whole time, and suddenly you know and you're like, oh, on one hand you're like, well, what about Brad? But on the other hand you're like, well, it is Rocky.
Yeah.
I mean, he is
Brad who?
Brad who. I don't think Brad may treat you like Rocky does, at least in the intimacy part. But and yeah, and then we get the doctor showing up. He's related to Eddie. We find out that also the next dark spot in this story is that they're eating
They're
Eddie,
eating Eddie.
which
That's not ham.
what I loved about that scene was everybody. Frank gathers everybody around the table. He's caught Janet with Rocky. The doctor shows up, which he's been studying the transmat beam, and he knew about Frank and Riff and the aliens. And this is the same doctor that is attached to Brad and Janet. But Frank decides to have everybody for dinner. He's like, you just think things are going to take tense, and then Magenta goes, dinner is prepared. Like,
Yeah.
Magenta saves it.
I
And
love it when he's got the electric knife and somebody starts to say something. He's like,
well, and again, there's more examples of riffraffs just not happy with this whole situation. He pulls the lump of meat out and just slaps it down on the table in front of him. Everybody's sad or disturbed. Brad's upset that Janet was with Rocky, and Columbia's
Mhm.
sad because Eddie's dead and the doctor's there. He's like, what the
He's
hell's
mad
going
because
on?
because of Rocky, and
He's mad because of Rocky, and Brad is lost in all of this. In all
Mhm.
honesty, Brad's just like he's still getting over the fact that he was intimate with Frankenfurter, and he's
Mhm.
trying to sort that out himself. you know, and so there's one of the best directed elements. Again, people catch on very quickly when they're carving out food. Magenta and Riff Raff, they're not serving food like with a fork and dumping it on people's
Just
plate.
grab Plop.
Riff Raff just taking the piece of meat and flap. He just flap. And just as they go to eat it, we find out the doctor's not there to investigate the aliens. He wants to find out about what happened to Eddie,
Eddie.
his nephew.
Mm.
You know, when Eddie said he didn't like
Didn't
his
like his
Teddy,
daddy, you
knew he
knew he
was a
wasn't
no
no
good
good
kid.
kid.
But when he threatened your
Threatened your
life with
life
a
with a
switchblade
switchblade
knife,
knife.
what a guy. Makes you
Makes you
cry.
cry.
And
And
I
I
did.
did.
Oh, the best thing is it only lasts a minute. They're throwing the meat out, and Frank, all he says is, "Oh, Eddie." He's like, "That is a tender subject." And
Yes.
everybody looks at their plate. Like it's beautifully directed because it's just a little subtle to where everybody's just like, I think Brad was just about to eat a bite or whatnot, and
Uh-huh.
he goes, "Oh, Eddie's a tender subject," and everybody's suddenly like, "Oh shit!"
Yeah, wait a minute. What this is ham, right?
And that's when Rocky reveals that, after they sing the Eddie song, he reveals Eddie's in the table and he
Hmm.
chases Janet Weiss, and we have a
Hmm.
wonderful
You better
song,
wise up. Janet
Janet
Weiss.
Weiss. Uh, and that's the thing, all these songs are so memorable, but you go through this whole thing and then things really come to a head, and then he has Riff Raff Medusa Ray everybody,
Hmm.
which turns everybody into statues and makes their clothing fall off.
Yes. Which makes this one another Frankenflix.
It does because we have it's statue form, but you have Barry
Yeah.
Bostwick peeing in
Yeah,
statue
it's a
form.
character in a movie.
That's right. And Rocky as well gets Medusa'd. Janet gets Medusa. They sing another song. You will not get away with this. You better not hurt her,
You're
Frankfurter.
a hot dog. Zap.
Zap. And then we get to the final show, which is this amazing song. Everybody has kind of feels like they've settled into who they are,
Mhm.
while as a statue they've had stuff to think. Brad, once again, still being the most awkward of the group.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you notice it? Like Brad, he
Yeah.
just could not completely. Even when he was loosening up, he was still awkward. The poor guy
Yeah. When he's screaming for his mommy and what's come over me? Oh, here it comes
comes
again.
again, and even when he's trying to dance, he dances
Hmm.
like
He's
awkwardly with the
fighting it.
bullet.
He's fighting
He's
it
like,
because he's so
yeah,
daggone repressed.
he
Poor
is so,
Brad.
whereas Janet, when she gets unfroze, she's embraced who she is.
She's Madonna.
She's Madonna. She's discovered her sexuality. She's discovered this whole thing that's been kept from her whole life.
Mhm.
You know, Rocky kind of has come into his own at this point too when he gets
Mhm.
unfroze, and Columbia is like, oh, okay, this is the way things are.
Mhm.
Uh and yeah, it's just this amazing scene where they sing about rose tint my world,
Mhm.
keeps me safe from
My
trouble
trouble and
and
pain.
pain. And I'm going to tell you right now, the lyrics to this song did not hit until now when I've listened to that chorus now. Just
Mhm.
the actual, some of that, maybe because I'm old now, I'm almost 50. I understand those lyrics so well now.
Because
Of
Frankenfurters created this world where
world.
everything looks fun and grand, but then underneath you've got murder, you've got cannibalism, you've got
You've got
you know
nefarious plans by aliens gone awry.
yeah, yeah. So
You've got even two people who uh you came with aren't accepting of you as
mhm,
well, of who
mhm,
you are, um and yeah, the rose tint has so many layers to it, that song, because yeah, here you realize Frank's been avoiding a lot of pain and a
mhm,
lot of uh suffering by having this wild lifestyle, he's been trying to, curb or cover a bit of the pain and suffering that he is suffering with inside of himself.
Mhm.
I mean, you get that wonderfully delivered line when uh Riff and Magenta show up to end things.
Mm.
It's not easy having a good time.
Yeah.
Oh no, that was after he froze everybody. When he
Yeah,
froze
even
everybody.
smiling makes my face ache.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
It was after he froze everybody because he breaks the fourth wall a number of
Mhm.
times, which is beautiful. But that's right, after he statued everybody, he looks at the camera and he just goes, "It's not easy having a good time, and even smiling makes my face ache." And you watch that, you're like, man, Frank has a lot going on.
Yeah, yeah, and then not only that, but when he's, singing the song after Magenta and Riff Raff come in telling
Yeah,
him that the game's over, we're returning to Transylvania, get the transit beam ready, and he sings that song about going home,
yeah.
talking about just how homesick he is and
How
mm,
he got to Frank got to be their self on Earth, but they also miss home
yeah,
and they're going home. Interesting thing too. Another thing, and I've watched this gotta be a dozen times over the last, since I saw it first in the 90s. Uh, is in the beginning you have Riff Raff and Magenta basically replicating American Gothic picture. The old
mhm,
man with the pitchfork and his wife next to him, and they replicate that at the church.
mhm.
When he shows up at the end with the gun, it's a pitchfork.
Yeah.
It's a trident. I'm like, it comes full circle, and my mind was just like, boom. I'm like, how? How did I not notice this before? You know? Um, and yeah, they talk about how Frank is not going with them, how his lifestyle's too extreme.
Yeah,
So I mean, even though Riff and Magenta have gone along with him, they don't necessarily agree with the way Frank was living because
yeah,
he lost track of his mission. He was having
mhm,
too good of a time.
yeah,
Um, and then we get a replication of, Frankenstein with Dr. Frankenstein and his monster, with Rocky
mhm.
carrying the now shot Frankenfurter, and it's just tragic. It's sad.
It's very sad. Because it was like a mix of Frankenstein and King Kong,
Mhm. On
and
on the old RKO antenna,
yeah,
because you
and
have that wonderful stage with the RKO.
yeah, it's just like, guys, you didn't have to kill him. You could have just gone home and left him here. Did it have to happen this way? I
And
mean,
Frank would have been fine too if they would have
yeah,
left him. He,
yeah,
he still had Columbia. He would have had Rocky,
yeah.
you
Brad
know.
and Janet probably would have stuck around.
Well, at least Janet. I don't know about
Yeah,
Brad.
yeah.
I'm still not sure about Brad. I don't think they ever com
I mean, he was getting down in that pool.
he was finally they were finally when they were all getting together in the pool, he was finally into it more, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, once he finally got into the pool. So, yeah, maybe he would have stuck around too,
yeah.
uh, you know, but, yeah, it's this tragic story at the end, and then when they you know
And it also made me sad, like Riff Raff, we've talked about how much he just can't stand
yeah.
working under Frankenfurter stuff, when even Magenta's like, "Why'd you kill him? They liked you." And he's like,
Yeah,
"They never liked me." And I'm like, "Oh, did oh,
yeah. It's like, wow, I'm like, then there's another layer to Riff Raff. Not only is
yeah,
is he the guy who, takes out Frankenfurter, which makes you not quite like the guy, but then you realize his motivation behind things and how
yeah,
he, has felt picked on over the years, his own right, and didn't think
yeah."
anyone cared for him.
And if you notice, he doesn't have a hunchback.
And he doesn't have a hunchback when he shows up later. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
his hunch was although I mean Frank didn't exactly treat him well. He did
He
hit
beat
he did,
him.
he beat
Yeah,
him, when he let Rocky go. So I mean, there's a lot of things as well there that Riff is dealing with, but a lot of people are in this.
Yeah.
This film is more than just kooky characters and wonderful musical numbers. There's
Mhm.
there's a lot underneath the surface going on this. Statements about lifestyle, sexuality, conservatism, repression, you know, uh, uh, culture, what's quote unquote norm.
Yeah.
I mean, so much going on in this film that I think that's one of the reasons why this has lasted so long, because those who
Mhm.
are real fans of the film understand that it's more than just throwing toast at the screen and saying Janet Weiss instead of Janet Weiss every time they say her name. Although the audience
And
participation stuff is hilarious. You
yeah, it's
watch that.
great. And just it doesn't end on a feel good note. Like
No,
it's kind of like the original ending of Little Shop, which you know,
the original, yeah, which we're covering next week. We'll be
yeah,
covering Little Shop of Horrors.
it's a sad ending, and the historian has that last bit,
Oh,
crawling on the planet's face, these insects called the human race, lost in
Lost in
time,
Time
lost
and
in
Lost in
space,
Space.
and meaning.
Oh my god, that
You
whole
know,
that thing, his final little monologue there still gives me chills
yeah.
when he says it, because he sells that so well, and it gives it so much meaning and
Hmm.
undertone with it that it's like by the end of this film you're like, I'm not quite sure how I feel, because this
Yeah.
film started out kooky and we got a
Hmm.
bunch of these unusual characters, and then
Hmm.
as we've gone along, this film has taken a number of turns, and then by the end of it, you're like, "Wow,
Yeah.
I I
This is
I had
heavier than I thought.
it's
Yeah.
heavier than I thought, and I actually have things to think about when
Hmm.
when this film ends." And they leave the globe glowing, and then we get the reprise of the opening song of Silence,
Yeah.
but it's the summary, which, if you listen to the lyrics of the opening song and the end song, it both gives you the summary of what's going to happen and what has happened, which I
Hmm.
also adore. It
Yeah.
bookends well. But I think this film is well directed. It
Hmm.
has a lot to say. It has a lot of meaning for many folks.
Hmm.
And I can scratch the surface on what I get out of it, but I just watching this film, I could watch it again and again.
Hmm.
And there's not a huge amount of films like that, but this one I could see just popping in and watching again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Although Although once you hear or know of the audience participation stuff, that
You
stuff
can't
will
help it.
play in the back of your head.
Yeah,
The the
when he says, "I see you shiver with Antissa,"
so
and you just say
say it.
it, patient.
Or or when you I really love the skillful way, you know, you caught, uh
Beat the other girls to the bride's
girls with
bouquet.
whips and chains
Yeah.
with a bride's bouquet. That too. Or whatever he's introducing himself. Hi, I'm Brad Major, asshole, and this is my fiance, Janet Weiss, future
Nice.
slut. It's like those words will just pop back in your
Hmm.
head. You know. Oh, and we've got a comment here from the Art Fortress. Thanks for
Oh,
tuning in, the Art Fortress. It says, so much depth. No wonder this film feels so special. So many points here I've never noticed before. Well, thank you,
yeah.
the Art Fortress, and thank you for tuning in. And yeah, there is more. If you give it a chance, there's a lot in this film. There's a lot going on in this film. It's a reason why it's a cult classic. It's a reason why 50 years later we're talking about it, and they're still doing midnight showings, like the
Hmm.
Oshkosh, where we do the Sawdust City Fright Fest
Hmm.
film festival. They do a traditional every year midnight showing. It sells out. They have people show up in costumes. They do the acting in front with the film.
Hmm. Hmm.
You know,
Uh, the Club One, the famous gay bar here in Savannah,
mhm.
uh, they do the live show every
Oh,
October. you
That's got to
know.
be amazing to see. That
Yeah,
just
I haven't been to one here, but when I lived in Tennessee, they did the live show
sure.
uh, in Bristol, and I went a couple of times,
Hmm.
dressed up and just had a great time. And I think that's why, you know, so many of us weirdos flock to this film. Yes, on the surface, it's a musical and it's quirky and it's good, but it's got all these undertones and themes and depth and meaning to it that it touches us.
Things you subconsciously connect to that you may not even
Hmm.
be realizing that you're connecting to a specific character or situation or theme or phrase, that you may not even be realize it's striking you or don't quite know why it is, but for whatever reason, this appeals to you. And yeah, I mean, just watching this film. And I watched the UK version, which had the restored superheroes tune at the end,
Oh.
because the UK one, it cuts from them running, and then we see the ship take off, and we just hear the chorus singing the tail end of superheroes,
Mm.
and we see our main characters, Janet and the doctor, and that all in the crater, and then we cut to the scientist. Whereas in the UK version, they actually have a version where Janet and Brad are singing superheroes, which is on the soundtrack.
Yeah.
That track was on the soundtrack. It just wasn't in the movie. What's hilarious is I was watching The Incredible Hulk the other day. If you listen to the main theme of the TV show The Incredible Hulk, sounds very similar to superhero. Just saying, not exactly, but I'm like,
It
you take
fits.
if you listen to the instrumental part, I'm like, wow, like it just really. But so there you have it, folks. Rocky Horror. I hope this discussion makes you seek it out if you haven't before, or maybe watch it again and look at it in a slightly different light. Again, for me and who I am in that, I get something different out of it than I know many people. This is very important film within the LGBTQ plus community,
Mhm.
because they get their community gets, their thing out of it as well. They connect to it differently than, say, myself or even Angelique will connect to it. But I think that's what makes it a great film, even if it
Yeah.
wasn't huge at the box office, even if it wasn't that popular when it first came out. It connects to people on different levels for different reasons, and yet everyone can get into a theater and enjoy it for different ways. And the songs are fucking hella catchy.
Yeah.
The every song, as the kids would say, is a banger in this one. I
And you'll
think
find yourself singing little snippets of them in your everyday life. I mean, I'm sorry, when all the
the
lights are on in the house and I flip one on, there's a
light.
light.
Uh, yeah, and I can't pick a favorite song out of this one. I really can't.
Mm.
Now you saw the trailer. We did see
Yeah.
the original trailer to this.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's very retro.
Very. And it's like, it's very spoilery.
It is.
And I don't like it.
Yeah, I think it spoils the movie quite a bit too. And I don't even know if it, though I don't know if any trailer you could release would give you a really good idea of just what type of film you're getting into. But at the
Yeah.
same time, I wish they would have showed less instead of more
Yeah.
in the trailer.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, maybe show Time Warp, show, but
Right. But I mean, like they showed Frankenfurter during the floor show, and I'm like, you don't want to reveal him until that pivotal moment after the time warp. I mean, that
yeah, I mean,
that would have ruined it for me.
you could show him with the initial shot with the opening of the elevator. It's still with the cloak on, the cape on, or whatever. But
Yeah.
uh, don't show any more. Like, keep it
Right.
a mystery
Right.
of these characters. But yeah, the trailer does give a lot away, unfortunately. So yes, folks, we're changing up our trailer segment slightly, and I think Angelique both agree, trailer really spoils things for you. It's a downer. It is a spoiler trailer. and not a hype trailer. So I'm still working on rankings, but it's definitely a spoiler trailer. So hope you've enjoyed this conversation quite a bit. And now, since this is an Over the Hill special, we do have one more thing, one order of business before we close things out for the night. We do have our wheel of random. Now, this,
Ooh.
folks, in case you're wondering, every year I've ended up doing a special series of some sort that has a special theme. Last year it was rated PC for pre-code, where each month at least one of the films we looked at were from a pre-code. This year, since I'm turning 50, it's the Over the Hill special. So each month we're going to look at least one film that came out from 1975, and it's picked
Ooh.
from a group of films that people voted on last year on which ones they wanted to see us talk about. Rocky Horror was the first one. We've got a list here of a number of other films. These are all now based off of their themes. Last year I did the movies, but I kind of wanted to keep it a surprise a bit. So
Mhm.
I'm not going to give you what movie it is right away, but I will give you what the name of the theme will be for February. So we're going to spin the wheel of random here,
All
and
right.
we're going to see. Yeah, we've got like Round Table, Rockin' World. We've got Captivated Audience, All Legs,
Mm.
Carradine Carnage, Heels on Wheels, Wasteland in was it Wasteland Wandering, Wickedly Wild, and Totally Committed. So yeah, so we're gonna spin this and see what February's theme is going to be.
Ooh.
Around she goes, where she stops, nobody knows. And we've got Wickedly Wild. So,
Ooh.
Wickedly Wild, let me pull up my little list here because I made a list because I have to have one. So, Wickedly Wild is definitely going to be an interesting month. Let me just double check here real quick. How many? What do we got? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, cool. So we've got 4 weeks in February. We've got 4 films, and Wickedly Wild is going to look at wild uh women movies,
Ooh.
basically. So our Over the Hill movie for Wickedly Wild month next month will be Switchblade Sisters from
Yes.
1975.
Oh, that's such a good movie.
So along with that, hopefully I can find these movies. We've got She Devils on Wheels.
Mhm.
We're gonna have Girl Gang from 1954, and we're gonna go for a modern one of Spring Breakers of 2012 as well. So we've got some women doing criminal things for Wickedly Wild month, and that's going to be February. So look forward to that for sure. And now, Angelique, if you've got something to shill, license to shill is yours.
Not much has changed since the last time we were on here together. I'm still getting stuff together to get Frankenflix off the ground. Uh, it's gonna be great. I'm working on the theme song right now, so just keep up with me on Facebook, and you'll see all the updates there. And as soon as something comes out, then you'll be the first to know.
Awesome. Awesome. And then if you're at all interested in anything that I do, specialmarkproductions.com is where you can find the archive of the spoiler room. You can find all our stuff there. There's a separate page for each episode, or you can check us on all your podcast feeds or right here on YouTube. Like, subscribe, bells and whistles and all that here. Help us get to 4,000 subscribers before the end of the year. It's a lofty goal, but I think we can do it. Only do it with your help. Thank you so much for listening to us talk about the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you, the Art Fortress, for your comment. And yeah, oh, and one more comment. Brilliant show, guys. I'll have to catch the next one. Well, thank you, Art Fortress. Every Monday at 9:30 p.m., we will be live unless we otherwise note it, and that'll be noted on the webpage. So thank you so much, everyone. And now, until next time, we'll just say good night, everybody.
Good night.
It's astounding. Time is fleeting.
Fleeting.
I've got the whole soundtrack playing in